everyone, and welcome to our Best of 2019 podcast, this time dealing with film, and I'm joined as ever by Chris Ward. Hello Chris.
Hello.
Wesley Shearer.
Hello.
And Ian Gregson joins us.
Good afternoon.
And we're going to talk about, as I say, the best films of 2019, and you guys are going to have to do the heavy lifting, because I will say I've not seen a lot of films this year for whatever reason. I've just not been out to the cinema very much. But as that's the case, I thought we could also start with the Scottish stuff, and it might just be my imagination, but I don't think there's been a lot this year. Chris?
No, like the only thing I was going through kind of my list of stuff that I'd seen, and the only thing that I think I saw this year that was actually made and released this year that was Scottish was Beats. I think that's been my sole exposure to Scottish cinema this year, outside of maybe like a couple of shorts at the Short Film Festival earlier in the year. But other than that, I think that's pretty much. It'd be a couple of like Brian M. Ferguson shorts and stuff like that, kind of local stuff coming through. But in terms of features, I think Beats was about it for me.
Wesley, have you seen Beats?
Exactly the same, just Beats for me, yeah.
Well, let's talk about Beats then, because for those that haven't seen it, it's written by Kieran Hurley, directed by Brian Welsh, and it's set, I think it's 1994?
94, yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of, when I was going out to clubs, 1994 was pretty much my cut-off point. I think that's when I said I've had enough of this. But it's about two pals who, it looks as though this is going to be the last summer as pals, and the music kind of takes them through. It's a very kind of Scottish twist on that last summer thing that Americans usually do so well. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. I liked it. I mean, like not unreservedly, but like I think his virtues far outweigh anything that might be to his detriment. I think you can pin some stuff out about maybe being a little on the nose in places and hitting the whole kind of like the cop dad thing a bit too hard and all this, and the kind of it really plays up the kind of the teen rebellion kind of angle kind of thing. But I think by the time they actually get to the climactic rave sequence, that just all that is cast by the wayside, because it's just such a kind of euphoric kind of 20 minutes of technique and the character work that they built up to that point all kind of coming together, and just that is such an incredible sequence, that kind of last climactic set piece, I think. Because
those kind of scenes are often done really badly, and I think this absolutely captured the kind of everyone in a field just going crazy for the music.
Definitely, much like what Chris was saying. Really enjoyed it. Wasn't without its flaws. I felt it was a little bit formulaic, but not always to its detriment, I don't think. I thought when it did break from the formula on occasions, it was absolutely brilliant. It delivered some really powerful scenes, especially there was a scene in the bedroom which was quite a tender moment, which was really nice. There was also obviously the rave scene which Chris mentioned, which is potentially the best representation of that I've ever seen on film. It was a little heavy-handed in places with the sort of Thatcher elements that sort of thrown in and chopped up in pieces with the editing, but it was really good. And I thought, interestingly as well, just the black and white part just served the film really well. It didn't just seem like a hollow artistic choice.
So it did that thing which I suppose maybe The Wizard of Oz did it first, but it was black and white for most of it, and then there were flashes of colour, particularly at the rave scenes and stuff like that. But I think you're right. I think it was done subtly enough that it really made its point and did it well. And I agree with you, there was some really good interactions between the characters. I'm thinking the brothers as well, where the younger brother kind of stands up to him, and I think he tells him stop showing off. Oh dear, immediately your heart sinks. He says, you are in big trouble here because this guy's a nutter. Exactly. But then like when the bad guys are chasing there are lots of bits that maybe are a bit too much, but I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the music. It was great.
I think it.
Sorry, no, on you go.
I was just going to say, I think it realises those parts as well. It plays on the sort of tropes of that type of film as well, and delivers it really well. And I thought the best thing it did for me that really sort of what's the word, like I sort of kind of connected with me in a way, was just this sort of like the way it portrays those really important and intimate sort of powerful friendships that you have in your life when you're that young age, that are so fleeting yet they're so important to you, that when you grow up, even in a couple of years time from that time, you won't have that friendship anymore. That friendship will never be reconnected again. That's gone, it's in the past, that's what it is, but it's still so powerful in shaping who you are and how you progress in your life, which I thought it done immaculately. I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, it's nowhere near as good, but it did remind me a bit of Morven Collar, that summer of music kind of making a difference to who you are and as you say, even though you might not, that friendship might not maintain, it's kind of never forgotten, I think.
It's one that I'd like to see. I've only seen it once. I'd like to see it again because I do think that the last act kind of reframes everything that comes before it. So everything from the rave on, and then you get those final scenes again of the last time the two of them are going to be together. Like, as you clarify, the two like leads, who are Christian Ortega and Lauren McDonald, who apparently are like real life pals and have that chemistry really comes through. In
which I think definitely
friendship.
comes through, because you know, you were talking about the tender scene in the bedroom. He says it absolutely feels normal, it feels real. So.
And then like at the end as well, where you get the kind of title cards telling you what happens to all the characters after the film ends, and you know, some of it is quite tragic, and you know, you then have that. And I think going back and rewatching the earlier stuff with the knowledge of, you know, where these lives are headed, I think gives it another dimension that maybe you wouldn't catch on a first viewing.
Did either of you see it in the cinema?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
See, I didn't either, and I really wish I had seen it in the cinema, because I feel like that would have really enhanced the rave scene a lot more.
I think like seeing it somewhere with a good sound system is crucial, I would say. Like seeing that central set piece, it's fantastic. Like that, and then like ending it with like the stand on the word, the Larry Levan like stand on the word. It was just it was like that whole last stretch was like really like smoothed over a lot of the cracks, I think, in the early going. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was certainly one of the best in terms of film and dance music and what it was like to be in clubs at that time. It absolutely captured it. A film which, touched on the formulaic, which I found, was Wild Rose. Now, I don't know if either of you have seen that.
I did see it.
I missed it.
Okay.
My mum greatly enjoyed it, but that's about all I can.
It was an enjoyable film, but I think you kind of. I don't know what you felt, Wesley, but I felt you kind of knew that it was going almost right from the beginning.
Pretty much. I must admit, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect from it. I was interested in it. I was intrigued a little bit. I came out. I said I would have said I enjoyed it to an extent. I felt like the Jessie Buckley, wasn't it?
Yes,
I felt like her performance. Part of her performance was excellent. The other part of her performance just felt really hammy and sort of didn't land with me at all. I think the accent didn't help.
Well, you know, it's funny. I've been talking about this, and I think you're probably right, because it just does slip, and that
really
may
does.
not seem important, but it really is important.
Exactly.
You know, if someone's, we're not talking Sean Connery not caring that he's in Chicago and just going for Connery. It's someone who's really attempting to capture the local accent and pretty much failing.
Yeah, because there is moments in it where she really sort of captures that sort of whirlwind nature of the character that you would expect in being in that situation. She portrays that really well in parts, but then other parts it does, you're just like, you know exactly where it's going. It doesn't really shift from it. It delivers a film that's good to see Scotland on screen, but I think we have this conversation quite a lot when we see Scottish films. We're just like, oh, it's great to see Scotland represented on screen and it's doing really well for cinema, but it's still not lifted up to that or elevated to that standard that we come to expect from films now.
That's actually one thing I thought was interesting about Beats, is that it had the kind of imprimatur of Steven Soderbergh on it. He gave them an executive credit, which made me think, oh, this maybe has the potential to travel beyond just, oh, it's nice to see, you know, Scotland on screen kind of thing, and actually become something a bit more universal.
I think it felt, going back to Beats briefly, I think it felt like a European film, like La Hand or something like that. You know, that because the use of the camera, it wasn't like just a drama, which is kind of like Wild Rose is, but not like a documentary either. It was used sparingly, but you know, really artistically, I think. So my major problem with Wild Rose was that when there was the kind of big dramatic peak, if you like, I just finished really quickly. It was like 1 year later, there's this huge change and everything's good, and then we get one last chance, and then I don't want to give it away. Do I want to give it away? Ends up get kind of at a concert at the end where it's like everyone who has been in the film is in the audience.
I mean, from the first 30 seconds, you know that's going to happen anyway. But I think that's a really good point, because I think to give it some sort of credit, building up towards that point, it does lay really great foundations for the character and the character's struggles and what they're going through, and you just know when it gets to that peak, as you mentioned, you expect it to. You hope that it's going to deliver something else that's just going to tip over the edge into more of a character study, and it doesn't. It just hits that peak and then just falls off a cliff into exactly what you expect it to be, which is, I think, a bit of a shame, to be honest. But I've seen a lot worse.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm talking about it because of the paucity of Scottish films this year. Talking of which, I haven't seen this film. I wonder if either of you have. The Angus McFadgen's Robert the Bruce.
No, I missed it.
No.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't playing in so many cinemas.
That's right.
As SNP activists, we're so glad to remind us.
Yeah. So this was, yeah. It certainly didn't. If it had been wide in cinemas, there's every chance I would have gone to see it. Because I think last year we talked about the Bruce, didn't we? With the
Outlaw King.
Yeah, which was I thought was a pretty good film. But so I can't really comment on it. I haven't seen it, but it was just interesting that Angus McFadgen's character from Braveheart was coming back.
The sequel we were all waiting for.
I think he was gutted that it didn't get seen by more people because I think it was a real passion project.
Oh yeah, you can tell by his Twitter. He was
on
it. Yeah.
So briefly for me, 2 films that I saw at Glasgow Film Festival this year. One was a documentary on Peter Howson called Prophecy, which was fascinating, and I think it's been shown on BBC Scotland, which we might talk about a little bit later. But yeah, it's basically shows Howson painting this huge masterwork from beginning to sale to going overseas. But there was a few things that were just amazing in it. One, the way that he works and the fact that the camera was able to make that dramatic in itself, and it is, he's a huge man anyway, and there was something really physical about the way that he paints. But also the information that was on the amount of money his paintings go for and where they've been bought and around the world. I mean, he's almost like a one-man arts industry himself. Incredible man. An incredibly humble man as well. When you saw him, you got the feeling he was never quite comfortable with this whole process, and wish it hadn't been. But it is worth checking out. As I say, it's on BBC. If it's not on at the moment, it'll come on again.
And what was that called again?
It's called Prophecy.
Prophecy.
Another one was I did a podcast with an American director called Andrew Peet, and it was on a film called Scots.
Yeah.
And what was the subtitle to it? The Golden Dram. The Golden Dram. Yeah, that's right. And I thought, well, this doesn't really sound like my thing, apart from it's about whiskey, which is fair enough. But actually, it was excellent, and Andrew had studied in Scotland, and when we did the podcast with him, he talks about how he was in St Andrews, I think, and on his own in a little student 1-bed flat or whatever, and he went to the local co-op or something, and he said, I want to try whiskey, but I don't know anything about whiskey, and the guy sold him like a half bottle of Glenfiddich or something like that. And he said, I didn't just go back and down it. I really took my time and said, this is really interesting. And it kind of started a love affair with Scotch whiskey. So what he does is he goes, he talks about it being from kind of grain to glass, that's the kind of, but it looks at all the different areas of the manufacture of whiskey, including at the highest end, how much it costs to get the bottles made, and and the people, and it just makes you realise, if you didn't before, that this is one of Scotland's great industries, and there are at its heart are people who are not just passionate about it, but just incredibly knowledgeable. He speaks to lots of the master whiskey tasters, and have had the jobs for years and years, and who's still, and what little tip. Said that if you're going to buy a whiskey, buying anything over 18 years old is kind of useless, because then the taste starts to go down. So if you do that, you're just buying it to have it to sell going on. And nearly all the interviews, all the kind of master whiskey tasters, I'm sure that they've got a catchy name which I can't remember, but and they kind of say the same thing. But so it's an interesting film. It won't be for everyone, but I found it a fascinating watch, and Andrew was great to have on here.
Yeah, I saw that as well, and it was very much. I felt like it was sort of in the same vein as anyone seen Euro Dreams of Sushi. It sort of followed that sort of idea of sort of this humble, quiet legacy of some sort of expert in their field. That Jim McEwan was obviously that person, and I thought that was really interesting part of the documentary. I didn't think it quite got the balance right between either deciding if it wanted to follow that story exclusively or deliver the story of the entire community spirit of the whiskey industry.
I agree with that.
And I think it done both those things really, really well. but I don't think it tied it together perfectly. But at the end of the day, it was a really interesting watch.
I think what he did was he found this character with an incredible story, who as a boy, you know, I think maybe underage, but certainly as a boy was taken on at the distillery and brought up in this role to be a working whiskey. And his story was just fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, it was almost like a Cinderella story.
That's right, yeah.
But then there were all these other people that came and went, but it would have been different. It maybe would have worked better as a 3-part television
potentially,
thing,
yeah.
you know, to get to know the other guys as well, and women as well. It was in this absolute thing, the growth of women in the whiskey industry was interesting. That was good that you saw it, because I don't think many people did.
Well, we saw it. My mum and I saw it actually at the View Cinema in Hamilton, because it wasn't shown that many places apart from the Glasgow Film Festival. It was just us two and like one other person, I think, in the screen. But yeah, I did really enjoy it, and I enjoyed seeing that on the big screen, bizarrely enough.
Yes.
Which was really great.
It was beautifully shot.
So beautifully shot.
Yeah, I mean, really stunning. I mean, it's worth seeing for that alone, even if whiskey's not your thing. And that's really my year in Scottish film, which is pretty poor. But I know you guys, thankfully, have been to see plenty of other things. So, Chris, let's start with yourself.
I think it's interesting actually that like the two big ones that you mentioned in the Scottish film were Beats and Wild Rose, and the common thread was music through all of them, because I feel like that's been a massive thing this year. I feel like there's been so many films either about musicians, featuring musicians, like concert films getting big releases. I really feel, I don't know what it is that's caused this surge, but this year alone you've had like Amazing Grace, The Unearthed, the Aretha Franklin concert documentary from the mid-70s, which is incredible. You've had Daydream Nation, Sonic Youth's concert film, which is actually filmed in Glasgow. It was filmed at the ABC and showed at the Glasgow Film Festival. Lance Bangs, the legendary music video director, came over and did a Q&A afterwards with Steve Shelley, the drummer from Sonic Youth. As part of that, had Beyonce's Homecoming, which caught like her directorial debut, caught her kind of epochal Coachella performance from last year over 2 weekends. Some amazing colour-coded editing stuff going on in that. Anima, Tom York's IMAX film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Like Jesus is King, Kanye's own IMAX film as well. West from Stars, Bruce Springsteen's directorial debut, plugging his new. I mean, all of these are essentially promos for the albums that they're accompanying, but it's still been interesting to see
the Bros documentary.
Of course, such a surge. The big one that ties in with maybe can lead us in nicely to more traditional film listing. Rolling Thunder Review, Martin Scorsese's Bob Dylan documentary, which was like his other big release this year, which I'm sure we'll talk about, funded by Netflix, but did get a limited cinema release, and it's amazing. It's so not what you would maybe have expected going into it. It's far from a straight like talking heads documentary, which immediately is what it might appear to be, but it plays very fast and loose with the truth. There's a lot of fictionalized character work going on, like some false interviewees. Sharon Stone plays herself in it and gives an interview about having been like essentially a Bob Dylan groupie in the 70s, which is completely false. There are some Photoshop photos of her in like a Kiss t-shirt from the 70s. Like they play like it's a really interesting thing that they do with it. I think because like so much of the tour that they were capturing at the time, so it's like capturing Dylan's Rolling Thunder Review tour from the late 70s, which is round about the bicentennial in America, and it's post Blood on the Tracks, and he's trying to do all this kind of weird Americana stuff again that he did is you'd maybe associate more with like the kind of Basement Tapes era, the band, the kind of John Wesley Harding years. Doing this kind of weird excavation of American folk music. He's going around painting his face white, and there's loads of stories in the film about what that is. Some people think it's kabuki, some people think it's because he saw Kiss. It's like it really plays that kind of Joker card like throughout it, where you're not really sure what's truth and what's fiction, but it gets to the point where it doesn't really matter because it's so adept at capturing the vibe and the kind of ramshackle nature of the night. This is a tour that he took Allen Ginsberg on with him. Joan Baez was there. Like Patti Smith is in the film. Like Joni Mitchell turns up at one point. It's that it really captures like a moment in time. And it's an absolute joy to watch.
Almost sounds like it should have been made by Christopher Guest or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. It is. It's that real kind of like blurring the lines. Where you're not like the ground you think you're walking on just becomes unstable under your feet. I think you have to kind of reevaluate and reframe everything you've seen so far. There'll be I'm sure everybody watching it will come to the realization at a certain point, but right from the get-go you're very clear that it's not just playing it completely straight. You know, it even has like Dylan's first extended sit down interview in like about 14-15 years, I think. And again, you can tell he's in on it. Like he's not. Yeah. He's not giving you the straight story. But yeah, no, like big year for Scorsese, I guess, because the other one, the one that I don't think we can not talk about is The Irishman.
Okay.
Which only officially went up on Netflix the week that we record this, but it did get again a limited cinema release a couple of weeks ago.
And did you see it in the cinema?
Saw it in the cinema opening night to a sold out crowd at the GFT.
Wesley,
yep, saw it at the BFI in NFT1, the big screen, to a sold out crowd as well. Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on it?
It's incredible. It's like film of the year. Like it's unreal. It's unreal actually. Scorsese's had an incredible decade. Like especially the run he's on just now. The last run of 3, but like this, Silence, and The Wolf of Wall Street is like the man's 77 now. You know, it's like, and his last decade, like the 2000s, probably not his strongest decade. You know, I mean, I still think very good work, but like it's. The 2000s, he made Gangs of New York, The Aviator, and The Departed, which I don't know are making anybody's Scorsese top 10s.
Departed is only Oscar win to date.
Yeah, true.
Which is incredible because it's not that good.
I have a lot of time for The Departed. I don't think it's absolutely top tier Scorsese, but then this decade, I don't know, something's really energized them because Shutter Island and Hugo to start with are both very good and very respectable as well. You know, really, you know, and all in different genres. Shutter Island's this kind of, you know, Val Lewton homage, you know, kind of psycho thriller. Hugo is like a 3D children's film about the birth of cinema, which features George Méliès as a character. But then from The Wolf of Wall Street on, it's been absolutely top tier. You know, I think he's made 3 of his best films in the last 7 years. It's incredible. The Irishman is the one that I think will maybe wrong foot most people going into it, because I think you hear Scorsese's back working with De Niro and Pesci, Harvey Keitel again.
He's going to be Casino.
Yeah, he's going to make another Goodfellas, Casino, Mean Streets. You know, Pacino's in this one as well. So it's very self-consciously playing with all these kind of, you know, icons of gangster cinema and the preconceptions that people bring it. And he's still here with Scorsese. People still peg Scorsese as a gangster filmmaker, even though he's made, like, you can count on one hand.
As you say, just the films you've mentioned are so diverse in terms of their style.
He's made like as many overtly religious films as he's made gangster films, you know? So it's extremely unfair, I think, to peg him as like the gangster guy, but it is, I mean, a lot of his best known stuff is in that world, and The Irishman it really feels like a reckoning with that. It's definitely like an old man's film.
Right.
And someone being reflective about not only their own work, but the kind of the world that they've inhabited and what it means.
And do you think that's why he got this cast back together?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think watching, there's no doubt that it needs this cast to work. You know, it needs Pesci to have come out of retirement for it. It needs De Niro back working with him. Even having Pacino for this, the first time Pacino's worked with Scorsese, which feels incredible, I think. But again, for this story in particular, it really feels it. So for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, I'm sure anybody who wants to will have checked out on Netflix by the time that we get around to this. But in case anyone doesn't know, it's based on the purportedly true memoir of Frank Shearer, who claimed to be a mafia hitman in the latter half of the 20th century for a Philadelphia crime family. And his big claim to fame is that he claims to be the guy who killed Jimmy Hoffa. Having been a good friend of Hoffa's and a protector of Hoffa's for several years. So it's this kind of act of betrayal. And it's narrated in flashback by an aged Frank Sheeran, who, played by De Niro, is now living in a retirement home, cut off from his surviving family. No friends left. They've all been killed or died of natural causes in the rare minority case. And it's kind of a shadow history of the latter half of America's 20th century. The Kennedys are involved, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all Hoffa's stuff with the unions, the labour movement and all that, and it moves at a fair clip to begin with, but then as the film goes on and this kind of funereal pall kind of starts to settle over it, it becomes this kind of having to grapple with your own legacy and what you've done in life and how those choices come to define you, and whether you're even able to recognise that. I think until it's too late and you're left sitting by yourself in shady pines.
Wesley, I take it you thought it was great as well.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely spectacular. This incredible sprawling masterpiece, and I think drawing on what Chris is saying, is the thing that really struck me was the fact that exactly what you had said, Chris, was that people just peg Scorsese as this mobster sort of director in gangster films, and people I think go into it maybe expecting that it's just going to be more of the same, and I know I did in a little way. I was thinking, what more can he actually do with this genre? He's done it all. He's done what he can do, and then he delivers this, which is entirely different from what you expect it to be. I just thought it was this sort of like closure, a sort of goodbye to everyone based on that sort of part of his career, and sort of finished it off really, really nicely. It was no sort of
kind of acceptance, like, you're like, I know this is what you think of me, so I'm going to do it the best way I can.
I'm going to tie it all up, and it's going to be perfectly done. And I think it was just no flashiness. It was all receding hairlines and flabby bodies, and
there's none of the glamour of like
exactly
Casino or Goodfellas. There's none of the flashiness. Like even they have the kind of the rise and fall arc, where at least it's fun on the way up and then it's bad on the way down. This is just maintains that level all the way through, and this is not glamorous at all.
The most glamorous thing in it is all of the flashy ties they've got, and that's about it. I just thought it was this really sort of mournful reflection on aging in non-flashy gangster clothes. It really, really is special, and seeing Scorsese direct Pacino, while Pacino turns it up to peak Pacino, dials it up to 11. It's brilliant.
In a good way.
A really good way. It really is something special, I think, and also actually having Joe Pesci he's finally had his time to shine, like, and show everyone what it is that he's so great at, because he's popped up in all of these things before, and we all watch him and we all think he's great, but he's never had that quiet moment to just deliver how good an
he's
actor
always
he actually
been like
is.
the little bombshell that's going to go off in a film.
Exactly, and just seeing him get that at the end of his career, he's obviously come out of retirement for it. Again, I think he's only ever done that once before for some really shoddy.
Yeah, he did a thing with like Helen Mirren and her husband. 10 years ago. Helen Mirren, so Taylor Hackford, the director that Helen Mirren's married to, was, made a film about 10 years ago, and they weirdly got Pesci to be like co-star with Mirren in it. But that's the only thing he's done since like the late 90s. I think like the Lethal Weapon 4 era was like kind of the last time Pesci was a regular.
Even in comedies, he was that character. My cousin Vinny, he's going to go.
There's more to him than sort of going to explode at any second and having a funny voice, and that really, really showed it.
I think it's interesting. You see, people seem to have forgotten, particularly the religious films of Scorsese. This is the man who cast David Bowie as Pontius Pilate.
So wouldn't you could have nailed Jesus to him? One review went.
So. It is interesting that people, I suppose it's just lazy in a way. You think, we know it's Scorsese's shorthand for, the gangster movie, and actually, he's just such an incredible,
He's not around. I think what it is he's. I mean, obviously it's a cliche to say Scorsese loves cinema, but it's the classic genres that he likes, and he's done all of them. He's done his musical. He did New York, New York. He's done his like woman's picture in inverted commas with Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. He effectively did his western with Taxi Driver, which takes kind of similar structure to The Searchers. He's done his boxing film. He's done the gangster films. Obviously, he's done his Val Lewton psycho thriller. He's done the children's film. He's got such a broad range. And again, it's the gangster films that have the most prominent iconography, the ones that really enter kind of mainstream consciousness. But
they've got the good lines, maybe. That's
exactly. But Guy Ritchie didn't get Philip Glass to score his film about the Dalai Lama. Like there's so many more.
Here's a film no one wants to see.
There's so many more dimensions to Scorsese than this kind of like dorm room college poster, like lad mag frat boy kind of image of like the fun parts of Goodfellas and Casino. There's every one of them has this kind of spiritual dimension to them, and they're very clearly the product of the same kind of like moral philosophy and everything and outlook on the world. Like he is undeniably like one of the greatest, and this has been one of his strongest decades.
It's funded by Netflix. There's no sense that it should have been television. It's definitely film.
It's definitely film. I mean, I've seen this week as well. Now that has gone up on Netflix. There was a thing doing the rounds of like some guy come up with a viewing guide to turn it into a mini series if you don't feel up to doing it in 3.5 hours. And it's like,
come on.
It's like, well, it's not. You're not being asked to sit down and watch all 13 hours of Out One in one go or something like this. It's like it's 3.5 hours, a half hour longer than the last Avengers film. And the duration is so key to what it's trying to do. You need to feel the weight of time passing on it. Like it's so much about the passage of time and the weight of that, and knowing these characters over this duration of time. You can't not do it in one sitting and have the same effect on you.
But it doesn't have a Hulk.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Not in the literal sense.
I'm talking about another huge movie that came out recently, which I'm presuming that you guys have seen and I haven't, and I'm it's my fault. The Joker or Joker.
I didn't see Joker.
Oh,
I
interesting.
didn't see it either.
Interesting.
Is that
Ian,
first?
You did. Well, Ian, what did you think about it?
I really liked it. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because it seems to, when we're thinking about the most talked about movies, of the year, and that's definitely one of the most talked about movies of the year. So yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, it was incredibly hyped, and that made me a bit worried. But I wanted to go and see it because it looked so good. Like it just looked like really stylish and really sort of dark, but not in that sort of obvious way. And yeah, it was great. It's all about Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
Yeah.
I think he really just takes the whole thing on his shoulders and carries it, and he can because it's Joaquin.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot gets read into how the sort of the social issues of our time and trying to be some lens on it. I think maybe that's reaching a little bit. There's some fun interplay between our sort of post-truth existence maybe and how maybe white working class America's kind of oppressed and might explode. But I don't think that's really the film doesn't deal with that as such. It just kind of nods in that direction in a sort of if you think this is scary, then look out your window and think about how scary is actually your life right now. So yeah,
well, from the outside, not having seen it, the two things I've heard say about it is, it's very violent and there's no comeuppance for the character, and you go, it's the Joker.
Yeah.
That's still the character. Don't you know what goes on? And a lot of people maybe won't know what happens with this character. Another thing is, we talked last year about, it's now gone from my head, Joaquin Phoenix film.
You Were Never Really Here.
You Were Never Really Here, of course. Which almost seemed like, without having seen it, there are similarities in those characters.
Definitely, yeah. Like the darkness is like the darkness that he kind of portrays in the Joker is like much deeper than what you would ever imagine from. It's not just of like trying to explain the Joker's origin story and that he's like this really tortured soul. It's not as like shallow as that. He goes really, really deep with it. And knowing that he did You Were Never Really Here and having seen that, you can see the lineage there for sure.
Interesting. So, and a lot of people said that it owes a lot to King of Comedy, kind of deliberately, which I know you're a fan of, Chris. Yeah. So why haven't you seen it? I
don't, because I can't be fucked with superhero
stuff.
But
this prejudice has now crossed. You're sitting in the Scorsese camp where they're all fairground rides, and it's. But if I thought there was one that this would have been.
No, do you know? I mean, like I get the interest in it, and I get people seeing it, but I'm just like, can we not just have that story with like someone not dressing up as a clown? Can we not just have like just a nice like mid-budget adult thriller, where it's just Joaquin Phoenix, which we had You Were Never Really Here.
That's what's interesting to me.
So I didn't really know why we had to have it again with the
because you put him in that makeup and it suddenly the box office goes through the roof. Which Slim Ramsey, unfortunately, would never have got it.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, it's just the kind of creative team behind it. The thought of the guy who made The Hangover dealing with hot button issues and stuff just didn't really appeal to me.
That's interesting.
No, as I say, the dealing with the hot button issues is not something to see it for.
Okay,
but for Joaquin Phoenix's performance in it, then
I love Joaquin Phoenix. I can't argue with that, and I'll probably see it at some point. But
was it something that you could have not deliberately avoided, but just you didn't fancy?
Not necessarily. I mean, again, as we've discussed before, I'm not a great lover of superhero films. If any, it's the ones I've watched would have been the recent Batman stuff, which I have enjoyed. Well, not the recent one. Sorry, I'm going back to the Dark Knight trilogy. Not that recent. So it was something that
not Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Not quite that.
I'm a Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
The original Batman, Adam West.
So I never really it sort of crossed my mind, but again, as Chris said, the creative team sort of really put me off it, and the idea of them treating these issues, especially in the sort of modern day of film of mental health issues and the stuff that goes along with that, I just think it just made me really apprehensive and uneasy, and I really wasn't wanting to watch it, generally speaking. But then as it went on, and a lot of the reviews came out, and a lot of people I knew that went to see it that maybe really heavily went in on it and didn't really like it, I sort of felt a little bit vindicated, like, okay, see, didn't expect to enjoy it, so I'm going to avoid it. And then surprisingly, quite a few people who I know personally who are really, really big advocates of positive mental health and dealing with that sort of stuff, who went in really apprehensive, came out and said that it treated it extremely well with a lot of care and a lot of caution. And then that sort of flipped it for me, and I was like, well, actually, maybe this is something I should go and see. But by this point, it was so far on, I just couldn't find the time to actually get along to see it. So it's definitely something I'm going to watch in the comfort of my own home. But yeah.
Okay, so after what you've just said, Avengers Endgame, what do you think? No, I'm joking, I'm kidding. So what?
I'm about 27 films behind the Avengers series at this point. I wouldn't have a clue.
I'll fill you in later if you really want to. So Wesley, have you got another one that you really want to tell us about from this year?
There is one which I'll maybe go into in a minute, but there's two I want to sort of pair together that I want to sort of bring out, because two of the standouts for me this year happen to follow teenage girls at the different stages of their lives, and those were 8th grade and Booksmart. And the reason I'm pairing them together, they're not exactly the same films, but in 8th grade you've got the lead character Kayla, who is around 13, and she's about to graduate from, what is it in America, middle school maybe, going into high school. And in Booksmart you've got two of the lead characters, Amy and Molly, who are around 17, 18, who are graduating from high school, so they're just leaving, going on to another part of their life. And Kayla in 8th grade is leaving one part of her life, going into this part of the life that the other characters in the other film have just left. So they both came out around a similar time this year, and I just think they're both really, really brilliant films in their own way. 8th grade, which was made by Bo Burnham, of sort of comedy YouTube fame.
I've got the soundtrack album.
There you go, because it's animated.
I haven't
exactly.
Seen it.
Well, I thought the film was honestly brilliant. I was really sceptical at first going into it, because I thought this is a film with a 13-year-old girl lead, and Bo Burnham, the comedy YouTube sensation, is the guy that's directing and wrote this film. How is he going to treat this, really? But he did say that he wrote lots of characters for this film, and he just so happened to end up concentrating on this 13-year-old girl, purely because she was a person that he felt he could most relate to emotionally, and felt like her story was the most important. So he didn't go in intending to write a story about a female or a woman from that sort of perspective, and I think that sort of comes through on screen, because he really manages to sort of get the balance and the nuance of these sort of specific challenges that are only unique to young girls growing up, while also sort of being universally relatable to people of different eras and different ages. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, the idea of it basically is Kayla is graduating from middle school, going into high school. She's obviously really apprehensive. She feels like a bit of an outcast. She doesn't have many friends at all. People see her as a little bit weird and stuff like that, but she's very, very, very much involved in the sort of social media world that all of these children of this age are. And she makes YouTube videos, but she doesn't get very many views. She maybe gets 10 or 15 views. Most of the people viewing them are probably people at her school who are mocking her for it, that sort of thing. And she lives at home with her dad. You don't know what's really happened to her mum. It's just her and her dad, this nice sort of like family dynamic. Sort of in the same vein of The Edge of 17, which came out a few years ago and was quite addressed that quite well. But this is a lot more kind of quiet and unassuming, and it's just, for me, it's just really, really great. I think it speaks about the sort of pressure on children who are born into this age of social media. And Bo Burnham said something at the Q&A that I went to see this year at the GFT, which I thought was really, really great. And it was something that was sort of, what he basically said was that kids these days are dismissed as being self-obsessed, but they're actually just self-conscious. And I thought that's something that's really, really stayed with me, because it's such a simple concept to understand, but it's not a simple concept to really get to the stage that you actually think about it. That all of these children that are going around on social media, on Snapchat, and making YouTube videos and constantly being immersed in this world, they aren't self-obsessed. They're not doing it because they want to be seen. They want to be seen and heard, and the way they feel they need to be seen and heard is through this medium, and it addresses it perfectly, and it's really, really, really well made, and it's got this amazingly pulsating score from Anna Meredith, as you mentioned, going throughout it, which complements it really well. Really well. And on the other hand, you've got Booksmart as well, which is basically just this sort of classic coming of age, last night high school comedy film, but people have sort of lazily compared it to Superbad. I think it's a lot better than Superbad, and Superbad was very of its time, I must admit, and
it's not dated well.
It's not dated well at all. However, this Booksmart really brings something completely fresh and new to that sort of genre. It sort of brings it right up to date without sort of feeling tokenistic. It's got all your sort of inclusivity and progressiveness throughout it, but it never feels like it's forced. And flies the flag for all these various subcultures, sort of groups and cliques that form throughout school. And again, basically the premise of that is that these two sort of bookish girls who really have never engaged in any sort of after school activities in terms of going out drinking with their friends or going out socialising. They just stick together, the pair of them, and they just study and try and get through school because they want to get into a good school. And then very, very early on in the film, they realise that all of these other people who have been out drinking, who have been out sleeping around, who have been out doing all of these other things, have actually got into the same university that they've been trying to get into, the same colleges that they've been trying to get into, and they're like, well, what was the point of this? We've been knuckling down all these years and everyone else is doing the same thing. This is our very, very last night before we graduate. We need to go out and just go and enjoy ourselves. And as I said, it really flies the flag for all of these sort of little different weird sort of subcultures of people. But the best thing about it is it never makes any of those characters ever change who they are at any point throughout the film. They basically stay the same throughout the entire film, and the only change that they experience is that they basically learn from each other and understand and accept each other's differences. And it's also like riotously funny throughout the whole film.
It's directed by Olivia Wilde, wasn't
it? It was directed by Olivia Wilde. Yeah, I think it might have been written by her as well. And you know, going into it, people would have been a bit sort of sniffy about it before it was released, saying, oh, it's just going to be the sort of Superbad for the PC generation and all this nonsense. But actually it was really well received upon release, and I just think it captures that whole, obviously you can't relate to it entirely because it's American, but it captures that whole experience and whirlwind nature of youth at that age.
Sometimes I think British, well, certainly I did, identify with those films more because they're not our experience.
Exactly, yeah. I just thought it was really interesting that two of the films that really stayed with me this year were both focused on the experiences of sort of teenage girls going through either into high school or from high school. Both from entirely different directors, both from one man, one woman, but both really of their time in a good way, not in a way that I expected to ever date. But they're both great films, and I would really urge people to check them out because they're excellent films, I think, for anyone of any age to really watch.
Chris, are they ones you've seen?
I missed both of them. Well, I think they were both quite limited. Well, not limited release, but I don't think they were around for very long.
No,
just like missed my chance to see them in the cinema, but we'll catch up.
So, have you got others that you're burning to tell us about?
Yeah, well, Burning could be one of them. Actually, Burning is I don't know if that was an intentional link, but yeah, Burning was very good. Yeah, Lee Chang-dong, the Korean director, adapted a Haruki Murakami short story, from The Elephant Vanishes, Barn Burning. And turned it into this kind of transplanted the action from Japan to South Korea, specifically the kind of the area around the border with North Korea, so just around the demilitarized zone, and made this really kind of haunting, meditative, again like very tapped into like contemporary youth culture and stuff as well, and kind of the energy of kind of, you know, not really knowing what you're doing with your life, and that kind of existential angst, and the kind of the tension that comes with it as well, and the anger. I think it really taps into a real seam of anger as well over kind of the world that we're kind of being left and handed. Stars Stephen Yeun, I think, who would probably be the biggest name in it, who's a Korean American actor. Who is he in The Walking Dead?
That rings a bell, actually.
I think so, yeah. Can't remember. Yeah. He's in a bunch of stuff that I haven't seen, but he's got amazing like star quality. You know, he's got incredible charisma, and he's potentially a serial killer. His long and short of it is never really good. It's left very ambiguous, but he kind of comes into the lives of like a young Korean couple, and then the woman goes missing about halfway through, and kind of dealing with the ramifications of that. There's a stunning central shot. It's like a long and uninterrupted shot set to a Miles Davis piece from the soundtrack to Lift to the Gallows, Louis Malle film, which is just round about the border of South and North Korea, where the central female character like dances, you know, basically in silhouette to this, you know, haunting late 50s jazz, and it's just it's one of the scenes of the year for me. But I only brought it up because you said Burn, so I can talk more in depth about a couple other bits and pieces. Yeah, well, Wesley talking about, I guess, like 2 different films that really honed in on the experience as a young woman. I guess 2 of mine are 2 that really honed in on the experience of being Brad Pitt. I mean, again, talk about like what a banner year for Scorsese, what a banner year for Brad Pitt. Two absolute career-defining performances. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I guess, is the obvious one, like Tarantino's latest, which again, like The Irishman, was a bad takes magnet. There were so many bad faith readings of it, I think, and I mean, obviously for obvious reasons, Tarantino can be a dick without being too far
on screen and off screen.
On screen and off screen, yeah, it's kind of hard, I think, for a lot of people to give him credit when it's due, just because of the nature of his personality and because it can be so abrasive. Just a beautiful film, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's got that kind of real air of melancholy and that kind of sense of, like a time just slipping through your fingers kind of thing, this like era that's not going to last, and maybe you don't even realise as you're in it how little time you have left of it, and this kind of passing of the torch from one generation to another. Focuses on a Western star, Rick Dalton, he's kind of gone to seed a little bit. He's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's very paranoid about his position in the new Hollywood, which is epitomised by his new neighbours Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate. This is the summer of 1969, so I'm sure anyone with a cursory awareness of modern American history can kind of see where it's going. Well, you do and you don't, I think, because obviously Tarantino has proven himself fond in recent years of rewriting historical outcomes without giving too much away about where the film ends up. But Rick Dalton and his stuntman, played by Brad Pitt, who is the kind of the real authentic deal where DiCaprio can only try to be the tough guy on TV. Pitt's portrayed as is effortless to him, and he's the cool one, and is really such
like TV's the fall guy.
Absolutely, absolutely. But he's it's such a showcase for Pitt's charisma. Just that real absolute movie star thing that you just can't you can act as hard as you like, but some people are just born with that, and it's one of the great movie star performances of this decade. It's just so, it's the kind it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but you watch Cary Grant, you think he's playing Cary Grant, but there's so much effort goes into making it look that effortless and make it look like it's just a natural, it's just him existing on screen, and that's the kind of thing that reminded me of with Brad Pitt. You look at him, you think he's just being Brad Pitt, but there's so much work and so much craft goes into making it look that easy. The rest of the film as well, also fantastic. It's this kind of fantasia of again, that summer is a real time and place thing. Production design is unreal, unparalleled. They basically recreated Hollywood in 1969 to the tiniest detail.
Wow.
Just a massive ensemble cast. You've got Pitt and DiCaprio. You also got Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. You got Al Pacino again. You got Emile Hirsch. You got Margot Qualley. Dakota Fanning as Squeaky Fromme. You got Lena Dunham as a member of the Manson family as well. You got Kurt Russell, Bruce Dern, Timothy Olyphant. It's a huge cast, and they all do very well. And it's, again, I think people heard Tarantino making a film set around the Manson family and were immediately, hackles were raised and were like, oh, how tasteless is this going to be? But he actually brings it to a really lovely place. I still have questions about some stuff in the final act. There's a level of extreme violence that I think it goes beyond what was necessarily needed.
But again, if you're going into a film, that's a major part of it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be,
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Tarantino.
It's not really. It's not so much being squeamish about the violence, so much as the way it's directed, I think, is how I would put it. Again, without wanting to get into spoilers if people haven't seen it, there's a level of cruelty and vindictiveness that I feel like I get in his head why he's doing it, but I think he hasn't necessarily thought through how it looks on screen.
Almost kind of horror.
Yeah, to have Brad Pitt repeatedly smash a young woman's face against the wall is I get why. In the film, you kind of get why it's happening, but you're like, this is not. I hate to use the phrase "not a good look," but it's not a good look. But I think it's kind of ultimately redeemed by the kind of the final moments of it, which are some of the most genuinely moving things that I think Tarantino's ever put on screen.
So the big problem I've heard from other people that have seen it is the treatment of Bruce Lee. Not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my place to say, do you know, because it's not guys like me that are complaining about it. It's not like white middle class Scottish guys that are complaining about the treatment of Bruce Lee in it. I don't think he comes across badly in it at all. You know, I think he is like, I mean, Bruce Lee's persona has always been, you know, supremely confident. And
I think you're talking about movie star charisma.
Yeah.
There was really no one. Oh no, that's not true. But you know, Lee was the kind of guy who people who didn't follow martial arts films still had on their wall back in the day. It was a huge star.
But I think like the issue with it is because like he's portrayed almost more as cocky than confident in it, and in a way that leads to kind of, I feel like he can be taken down. So the central set piece with Bruce Lee in it is basically like Brad Pitt mouths off to him on set and Bruce Lee challenges him to a fight, and it's like best of 3 and they each win a round and then it's called off.
Done like
it's called off before, so
quite Tarantino set.
I think the contention is, it's ridiculous that this 50-something stunt guy could hold his own against Bruce Lee, but the way that they frame it is that like he only basically is able to beat him in one round because he's, you know, Bruce Lee's shown his hand in the first one, so he knows the kind of tactics to go for, so he's thinking through. Then you're also, it sets up this kind of almost superhuman element to Brad Pitt's character, which you need for the third act to land fully. I think there is a reason that it's there. Again, it's another case of Tarantino writing something down and not fully thinking through the ramifications of it, like the violence in the third act. Like it probably sounds great in his head, and he hasn't considered. I don't think he does either. And I think, honestly, I kind of think that's what you need at a certain level, is to just not care like about how something's going to be received and just go for it. Because obviously not every aspect of it's going to land, but the risk that you take to make that happen like can have payoffs, you know, that maybe you hadn't anticipated. So I don't know. But
interesting enough, I mean, I remember the same things being charged with Scorsese with Casino. That it had gone too far, and you know the camera lingered too long on some of the certain scenes and that. So I guess it's one of the things that happens in a big film.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely when you're... Well, one of Scorsese's big things, I mean, we touched briefly on his kind of Marvel comments. One of his big things that came out of that was talking about the elimination of risk at a level of studio films where they just want to sand off all the rough edges and have nothing that anyone could find objectionable so they can sell it to the biggest possible audience. I think when you have distinct individual voices like Scorsese's, like Tarantino's, they're not going to be for everyone, you know, and they are to a certain degree a risk, despite their track record and despite, you know, like having made all these massive films that are widely beloved in the past. Every film they come out with carries this undercurrent of potential failure because they're trying something that maybe nobody else is trying, you know, and you're going to potentially alienate a section of your audience, and I think that's probably what raises people's hackles more than anything else about these two filmmakers in particular, is that they do still carry that element of like you're never quite sure what you're going to get from them, you know.
Which I think Wolf of Wall Street was accused of as well.
Again, it's the whole like endorsement or depiction thing, you know. It feels like we have the same argument every year about like at least one film, but like,
you mentioned two Brad Pitt performances.
So the other great Brad Pitt performance of the year is in James Gray's Ad Astra, which is the kind of the sad boy emo brother to Interstellar, I guess. So definitely much more my kind of thing. I
want to go see that now.
Listen, if you ever wanted a space movie to make you cry several times and bring up your unresolved dad issues, God, this is so Brad Pitt's an astronaut. He is tapped for a mission. His own father, also an astronaut, played by Tommy Lee Jones, went missing several years earlier after a mission kind of went out of radio contact. They've now picked up a signal at the edge of the solar system that they believe might be being sent by Tommy Lee Jones' character, and they ask Brad Pitt to go and see if they can track him down and bring him back, and it raises all these kind of Freudian, you know, dad issues.
Go and save your dad, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, and it's structured, the structure of it kind of borrows heavily from Apocalypse Now, with Tommy Lee Jones as like the kind of Kurtz figure, and Brad Pitt as Martin Sheen, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. It's the most like,
fantastic.
I mean, it was a weird thing. I mean, I don't know, like James Gray is a kind of weird figure because he's one of these guys that it feels like 20 years ago he would have been working at a steady clip and making these kind of mid-budget, you know, classically styled Hollywood movies, and we'd be getting several in a decade. I think we've had like 3 James Gray films this decade. He's an immaculate craftsman, fantastic director, adored in France. You know, one of these guys.
What are his other films?
So he made this decade. He's also made The Lost City of Zed.
Yes.
With Robert Pattinson, Charlie Hunnam. He made The Immigrant with Marion Cotillard and Joaquin Phoenix, which never really got a proper release over here because of Weinstein Company finaglings. He made Two Lovers with Gwyneth Paltrow and Joaquin Phoenix. Worked a lot with Joaquin Phoenix. We Own the Night, Little Odessa, The Yards. He made a few kind of gangstery films as well. Kind of not dissimilar to Scorsese, often New York set. He comes from, I think, a Russian-American background rather than Italian-American. But again, you can see the kind of Scorsese influence, particularly on the early stuff. And again, like Scorsese, comfortable hopping about from genre to genre, going from this kind of turn of the century jungle exploration from The Lost City of Zed to, his own kind of 2001, Apocalypse Now kind of effort. But yeah, no, I can heartily recommend it. I get great, it looks incredible. Cinematography by Hoy van Hoytema, who also shot Interstellar for Christopher Nolan. But yeah, I keep bringing up Interstellar, and I think this is definitely, I definitely prefer it to Interstellar. It's definitely got that additional kind of element of, I think, psychological complexity and genuine emotion that I don't often get from Christopher Nolan, I think.
No bookcases.
No bookcases in this one. No, a killer monkey though. So
now you're talking.
A killer monkey and a car chase on the moon. So yeah,
Spaceman and a killer monkey, and that's it. That's all I'm for a film.
So heartily recommend. And so again, it got an IMAX release. I think that was the staggering thing as well. It's just the idea of seeing a James Gray film in IMAX was enough to pique my curiosity. So absolutely loved it.
Okay.
Heartily recommend.
So we're just about an hour in, and I feel you've got lots more to tell us. But if you could do so, maybe a bit precise, because I really would like to talk about some of the best stuff of the decade at the end before we finish. So, are there other films that you really want to tell us about from the year?
Yeah, very, very quickly. I think one of my films of the year, Irishman aside, was If Beale Street Could Talk. Now that came out very, very much at the start of the year, so it's easy to forget that it happened. Much like was the same when Moonlight came out, I think, as well. But I mean, it's a Barry Jenkins film, so it would have taken something spectacular for it not to be on my top spot. As with all his films, it's just pure visual poetry. I mean, the entire film is just one sort of slow dance, focusing on really, I suppose, the endurance of love and the sort of racial tensions that come along with that and that sort of period of America. And I saw it twice. I saw it with a really quiet audience, and I saw it with an audience who were really, really involved in the first quarter and sort of reacting in all the right places and laughing really quite heavily at the sort of subtle jokes that were there until it reaches the sort of living room scene. And then the sort of tone just completely shifts as soon as she there's another scene as well as soon as she utters the words "unbow your head, sister," which is also quite famous in the book itself. Just the whole tone of the film completely shifts. It's magical, and the score by Nicholas Britell is just one of the most evocative scores I've listened to in a long, long time. And then I suppose there's not really too much else. I think I saw Pain and Glory. Pedro, I always can mispronounce his name. Almodovar. Pedro Almodovar. Yeah. Bursting with colour. Really, really reflective, sort of self-reflective, sort of rich, beautifully paced film with Antonio Banderas delivering an excellent performance, who sort of forgetting how good he can be.
It's a kind of biographical film,
very autobiographical, yeah. It's also extremely funny as well, but some of the quiet moments throughout it are the best. And then I suppose finally for me, one of the most interesting films of the year, although it didn't hit in all the right places, was Bait. I mean, Bait is this sort of film about sort of the to and fro and the push and pull of people in a sort of Cornish fishing community.
I heard about this.
Yeah, so basically the sort of people who are coming in and they're sort of setting up shop, if you like, in Cornwall, and they're bringing in tourism into the area, which is benefiting the area, but is also at loggerheads with the people who live there. And it's very, very focused on the sort of social tensions, but it's shot in I think it's a 16mm.
It was a Bolex camera that the director Mark Jenkins recovered from, I don't even know where he got it. It dates back to like the 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
And it doesn't record sound, so you had to post sync all the sound.
That's
so
right.
you almost get this aspect of like it having been dubbed into your own language.
And it gives us really eerie quality. Like for me, it was very much like sort of F.W. Murnau meets a little bit of Fritz Lang, with a little bit of sort of Lynchian in there, I suppose, which is a bit cliche. But I mean, I think it was really interesting for me. I felt like 5 minutes in, I could see how the entire film was gonna pan out, which sort of took the sort of shock value away from it for me. And it was sort of slightly plodding in places, and I felt like it stretched a little thin, even though it was only an hour and a half. However, I admired so much about it, and I'd rather like someone makes that sort of ambitious film than doesn't. And some of the sequences in it were like filled you with so much dread, and it was really, really, really well done. And I think like I saw it in a packed cinema audience down at in the Barbican, and all the cinema audience completely sold out. All sort of laughed, reacted, gasped in all the appropriate places, save for one like moment of really misplaced laughter towards the end which the smash mirror scene, and someone just cackled out loud at it, and I was a bit like but I think it's really easy for these types of films to be completely dismissed as like art house fodder just for critics, and you can't really argue with that sometimes, but I felt like it worked really well for the general audience, which is shown in terms of how well it's done. And my girlfriend I went to see it with as well, who might not have been her cup of tea initially, and I felt like I was dragging her to it. At the end of it, she was just mesmerised, like she was speechless. She was like, that was absolutely brilliant, and she said if I'd saw that at home, that would not have worked for me, because I saw it in the cinema like that. I've enjoyed it so much, and I think that's just testament to seeing films on the big screen.
On the big screen, Chris?
Yeah, I would echo all three of those. They're all probably among the best films I saw this year. Like, If Beale Street Could Talk was my favourite film of the year until I saw The Irishman, so I would definitely echo that. And Bait I loved as well. I thought it was again something that could have just descended into gimmickry, but like it was a good match of like form and content. I thought it actually made sense. This kind of because it's all about dealing with tradition and how that comes up against modernity, and so when you have like this kind of old format of filmmaking kind of appended to a modern day setting, like it kind of it staged that really effectively. Pain and Glory also thought was great. I think there were parts of it where I was like, it feels like kind of fairly Almodovar on autopilot, but there's this one extraordinary central set piece where Antonio Banderas, playing essentially Almodovar, is reunited with his first boyfriend who he hasn't seen for 35 years, and it's just a massive coincidence, as often happens in Almodovar films, that brings them back together, and they have this like reunion set piece in the middle, and it's such a gut punch. I made the perhaps not wise decision of seeing it 5 days after a breakup, and was totally like, it was a very precisely calibrated gut punch. So yeah, that really hit hard. Along similar lines,
it's like digging into that Randy Newman album.
Absolutely. Speaking of Randy Newman, actually, and very thematically similar, did the music for Marriage Story, the new Noah Baumbach film, which is kind of ironically titled because it's actually about a divorce and the process that follows it. So Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson play a couple who are in the process of separating, and the film just kind of tracks that process in all its painstaking detail. Unlike something like Blue Valentine from a few years back, it's hilarious. It's very, very funny, because Baumbach's a funny guy. His films are funny generally. He generally makes comedies, and it is very funny. It is also heartbreaking because you're watching, you get to know these people, you get to like them, you get to, and you see them just kind of realise that they can't make it work, kind of thing. So it's very it's not a tough watch in the sense that it's grueling, but there are moments where it does get very emotional. It's very adept at wedding those two kind of tones, where you're able to laugh at kind of the ridiculousness of some of the situation, but at the same time, really feel what they're going through. I think is definitely one of Baumbach's more accessible and warmer kind of films. If anybody's been put off by the kind of abrasiveness of some of his earlier stuff, like something like Margot the Wedding, is definitely not like in the same kind of lane as that. It's definitely a much kind of warmer film.
I've heard it compared to kind of Annie Hall.
I think there's definitely like now that Woody Allen has become he who must not be named, I think Baumbach's really like filling that void, I think quite adeptly. That kind of like New York comedy, kind of urban sophisticates kind of thing. And this one as well, it does the Annie Hall thing of splitting between New York and LA and all that kind of thing, and the comment on the differences between them. So definitely if that's your kind of, if that's the kind of thing you're into, then definitely Marriage Story I would strongly recommend. I'd also like to give a shout out to Chained for Life, which is kind of I guess a kind of oddity. It doesn't really fit into anything. So it's Aaron Schimberg, an American director, who made it, and it's kind of I guess it's mainly about representation of people with disabilities in film. It stars Adam Pearson from Under the Skin, who is the people who saw Under the Skin remembers the guy. I think it's neurofibromatosis is the name of the condition he has. He's the guy who Scarlett Johansson picks up and lets go. He has the facial tumours. So he plays one of the actors on a film that a European director is making. He's making his American debut in this. So it's a film within a film thing, and he's making a kind of horror film along the lines of something like Freaks or something like this, where he's casting people with actual physical disabilities. And a standard good-looking American actress is brought in to be the kind of damsel in distress in it, and it's all about her kind of relationship with Adam Pearson's character and him being very kind of urbane and witty and all that, and really diffusing your expectations of how disability is represented on film, which makes it sound very worthy. It's not. It's hilarious. It's very. It almost reminded me of like Peter Strickland films, something like In Fabric, which also came out this year, or Barbarian Sound Studio. It kind of plays with pastiche a little bit. There's it sets up these kind of generic expectations. It feels like you could veer into horror at places. There's kind of background news bulletins about a serial killer on the loose and all this kind of stuff, and it kind of feels like you could tip over into genre territory, but never quite goes where you expect it to end up. It's very satisfying. It's kind of maybe slipped under a lot of people's radar, but I can definitely recommend seeking it out if you get a chance. I think it's getting a Blu-ray release early next year, and it's fantastic.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And the other one I would give one shout to before we leave this year behind is Claire Denis' High Life, which is her first English language film in almost 20 years. She's a hugely acclaimed French director who made like Beau Travail and Bastards, and most recently Let the Sunshine In with Juliette Binoche. And it's again, like Ad Astra, a good year for high concept sci-fi. So it's about a prison ship, basically a ship of death row prisoners who have been, in lieu of being executed on Earth, have been sent on a mission to basically go inside a black hole because it feels like almost certain death anyway, so you might as well send prisoners.
Right, okay.
And Robert Pattinson stars. Juliette Binoche is the kind of mad scientist on board with them who does the experiments on them and is trying to conceive a baby in space. Mia Goth, Andre 3000 is in it as well, or Andre Benjamin, they give him his Sunday name as he's credited in this, and it's again probably not what you expect from any of the people involved except Claire Denis. It's gorgeous, it's brutal, it's repulsive, it's cerebral, it's baffling, it's great, it's really really great. So yeah, if you can seek it out, and of course as always Claire Denis music by Stuart Staples from Tindersticks. So,
yes, that's right.
So also that to look forward to. But yeah, so that's, I think we've now covered the entirety of the top 10 for me. So only took us an hour.
Quite happy.
Yeah.
So before we finish up for the year, I would like to talk a little bit about a choice of one best Scottish film of the last decade and another just your favourite film, if that's possible, of the last decade. And I'm going to start, best Scottish one for me. I thought a little bit about Shell and Trainspotting 2, which we talked about last time, which I thought was better than it had any right to be. You Were Never Really Here, which we mentioned earlier on, but I had to check that it was in the last decade. But Under the Skin is my definite favourite Scottish film in the last 10 years. Chris?
I mean, it's got to be, right? It's Under the Skin. I mean, I feel like we're going to have all three of us are going to come to a consensus on Under the Skin here.
In a way, that's good, because what a great film it is.
Yeah, I mean,
I watched it again recently for the first time in a while, and oh my god.
There's nothing else like it, I mean, it's not even like a kind of thing where, a lot of the time I feel like when we talk about good Scottish films, it's like, oh, it was good for a Scottish film, kind of thing, but this is just, it's a great film. It's a film that's genuinely topping, like, best of the decade lists the world over.
Could easily have been my best film.
Exactly,
and it perhaps is, but I'm going to choose something else.
I mean, again, like you say, other potential contenders, like obviously You Were Never Really Here, and Lynn Ramsey also came. We need to talk about Kevin this decade.
Oh God, yes.
Where You're Meant to Be, the Aidan Moffat's documentary, which is fantastic. Even I have a lot of time for God Help the Girl, Stuart Murdoch's directorial debut. I know it wasn't to everyone's taste, but I have a lot of time for it. Peter Mullen's Neds was this decade. Terence Davies' Sunset Song.
I think I really liked that at the time, and I watched it again recently, and it wasn't quite as good as I remembered it. But there you are.
I haven't seen it since it was in cinemas. I have fond memories of it, and I've forgotten his director. John McClane's Slow West.
Oh, Slow West. Yes, now that was one I was considering, which was his Western.
Yeah.
Really understated and. Yeah, it was a fantastic film. Do check that out.
Who'd
It's
have
a
thought
great film.
former member of the Beta Band had it in them?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Under the Skin. I mean, nothing else really compares. I think to Under the Skin. It's the most authentic depiction of Glasgow I've ever seen.
Well, that's that as well. Yeah, that's very true. Wesley.
Yeah, I mean, firstly looking at actually thinking of Scottish films of the decade, I was a decade out because I was like, maybe I would think Red Road or does Ratcatcher count as this decade? 1999. So I was well a decade out, forgetting that this decade actually includes years such as 2017 and 2016. But yeah, I mean, Under the Skin is up there. I think it didn't work for me in all places. I haven't seen it since the first time I saw it in cinema, despite having it in Blu-ray. I do want to revisit it though, I think. But I mean, even Mika Levy's score is one of my favourite scores in the past decade, so it stands on that alone in some of the location shots and the sort of unnerving, this landmark scene going towards the end of it as it closes is spectacular. But I mean, just looking through the other films that I'd sort of noted, Chris mentioned most of them, to be honest. Obviously You Were Never Really Here stands out up there. Completely forgot about Slow West. I think that's a really, really great shout. I think The Great Hip Hop Hoax, by the way, that came out in 2013. That was a really good documentary. I really enjoyed that. And Calibre, I think I just wanted to shout out Calibre again because when I first saw it, I really enjoyed it. But on a second viewing, it actually landed a lot more. So Calibre was that sort of Matt Palmer film. He wrote and directed it with Tony Curran in it, and I've forgotten his name now. Can't remember. He's in Dunkirk. He's in a few other things. Scottish actor, really well known. You'll recognise his face. But basically, it was really sort of tense, coarse, ambiguous sort of film that. Was
that a television
Netflix? I don't think it was made by or for Netflix. Netflix just picked it up.
They picked it up after. I think it was after the Edinburgh Film Festival last year. They got picked up on Netflix. It's up for distribution.
It's just got this really sort of stomach chilling setup, and it sets itself up as this really sort of standard thriller fare, but it certainly does this groundwork to lay on this really intense last half part of the film. And it's just a really good top notch genre film, and I think it sort of flew under the radar a little bit. And also remembered that it's not a great film, it's pretty formulaic, but charming by numbers, but I quite enjoyed it. It was The Angel Share, which came out in 2012. Not exactly what you'd expect from Loach. I suppose it's more akin to maybe Kes or something like that, but it just completely slipped my mind until thinking of it this week, and then realised that it actually did come out this decade. It's just a nice sort of like charming Scottish film. It's very much, waving whiskey and kilts in your face, but it's Ken
Loach meets Tartanry, isn't it?
Yes, it very much is. Yeah.
I enjoyed it as well. I have to say, and I must go back and watch Ned's again because I haven't seen that since
still not seen it.
Came out.
I haven't seen it since it was in cinemas. I remember it being half great and half not so great, but
quite harrowing in places as well.
Because Mullen's been absent as a director since then, I think it's one that I would look back on more fondly now, just because we haven't had a Peter Mullen film for 10 years at this point.
It's not Orphans, which is still
still his high watermark.
I think so, definitely. So let's round off this podcast by talking, just I think very briefly, what's your favourite film of the last decade?
I mean, right, I thought long and hard about this because obviously, you kind of want there to be an element of recommendation here. And I don't think I need to direct many more people to go see any of Scorsese's last 3 films, or Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, or Terrence Malick's Tree of Life. I think anybody who has a cursory interest in film will have already seen the big hitters from the decade. So what I'm going to say here, I don't know.
It's the Long Dark World.
Ragnarok. Actually, no,
that's a good film.
But. The one that I think I would give as a recommendation, because I feel like it'll be the one that fewest people listening will probably have seen, because it never actually got proper distribution over here, is Don Hertzfeldt's It's Such a Beautiful Day, which is almost a kind of companion film of a trilogy of animated films. He's an animator, and he animates every frame of his own films by hand. He's based in Austin, Texas, and he kind of got a start. People probably have seen some of his short films without realising it. They made the rounds in a lot of early kind of internet video compilations and stuff. But he won an Oscar for one of his early shorts, or was he nominated? He was at least Oscar nominated for an early short. And made this, which is to date still his masterpiece. So it centres on basically a stick figure called Bill, who is diagnosed with a mysterious neural illness, and it basically in the space of an hour unpacks his family history and sends him kind of careening into this kind of transcendent Terrence Malick kind of future to the end of human civilization, pretty much. It follows him through this kind of cosmos. It's hilarious, it's heartbreaking, it's dark, it's harrowing, it's beautiful to look at. And as I say, never got proper distribution over here. I saw it at the Glasgow Film Festival, and then you have to actually buy the DVD directly from Don Hertzfeldt himself online, which I can recommend doing because it's absolutely incredible. He followed it up with another couple of widely acclaimed shorts, World of Tomorrow and his sequel, which I think was just World of Tomorrow Chapter 2, which again I think you can get them on Vimeo, you can stream them, that kind of thing. You won't get them on Netflix or Amazon, I don't think, but you can definitely go on and rent them, or buy them outright. But they are the most like profound, incredible, like compact, concise films I've seen this decade. It's just up there with anything else that I mentioned in the run up to that. So yeah, that's my recommendation to seek out Don Hertzfeldt. It's such a beautiful day.
Good man. And Wesley?
Yes, I also, like Chris, thought long and hard about it. However, I did not think of actually recommending something people might not see. Yeah, and I mean, he's like, and you know what? Although I might probably will throw out a bit of a curveball because maybe it's not one you would expect me to say, but I mean, of course, Phantom Thread, The Florida Project, Moonlight are all ones that are really up there for me. Carol as well, Roma, Brooklyn, those ones that we've discussed over the past few years that have really stuck with me, I think, are spectacular. But do you know what? I think my best film in the decade has to be Paddington 2.
Superb
choice. Film. Honestly, what a brilliant film. Up there with The Godfather Part 2 in terms of sequels. It is, but in all seriousness, it's such a really beautiful film. I mean, it screams of Wes Anderson throughout it as well, which is really bizarre, whether you think that's a good thing or not. And I think it's really easy to dismiss it as sort of feel-good fluff, but pun intended. But it's so much more than that in every single level. I think it's got this amazing message of sort of tolerance and acceptance, understanding and compassion throughout it. Really celebrates diversity without sort of shoving it down your throat at a time where people really need that sort of message. Because it doesn't feel forced at any point. And it's got a spectacular supporting cast, not least Brendan Gleeson, who's brilliant in it. And I mean, at its heart, it's essentially a story of a refugee. Like, it really is. And it's got a career best performance from Hugh Grant in it. So I mean, what more can you ask from a film? It really is a brilliant film.
That's a great choice, I have to say. I am going to go a bit route one. I would say it's actually a Scottish film, but you talk about films that you can't, people maybe couldn't see at the cinema and find hard to get. Well, Mae Miles Thomas's Voyageuse, which we talked about last year and we did a podcast with her, is exactly that. You can go online, Vimeo, purchase it, have a look at it. It's fantastic, and it's about uncovering this secret history of her family by going through someone's things after they've passed away. Beautiful film and really worth watching. But route one, mine is Phantom Thread, because I was thinking over the last 10 years there's no other film I think where it's just knocked me sideways in terms of everything about it. Johnny Greenwood's soundtrack, Daniel Day-Lewis's apparently last performance, and the way it looked, and it was all about good clothes as well. I mean, of course I'm going to go for that, but I just absolutely adore it.
Paul Thomas Anderson's another one like Scorsese, where I feel like you could have picked any film he made this decade. It would be. I mean, because Master, Inherent Vice, and Phantom Thread, like that's an all-time run.
Yes, but I did. For me, Phantom Thread is the one out of those three. Well, thanks very much. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
so that was not just your best films of 2019, but also of the past decade. And we'll be back soon with another best of 2019. We'll see you then. Cheers.